Welcome to the Mom and podcast. We're your hosts, Susanne Kearns
and Missy Stevens. We want to help you through everything that happens in the ellipses, from your professional life to your emotional health.
You're a mom and so much more. Let's figure out what comes next together. Hello, welcome to the Mom and podcast. Today our guest is Jen Mann. She's a mom and best-selling author, blogger, crafter, former real estate agent, and so much more. Our chat with Jen ran just a little bit longer than expected, so I'm going to keep this part short, but we're so excited you're here because this episode is packed with great time management tips around time blocking and Jen's important reminder to stay focused on your own path instead of thinking you need to be doing all the other things the people around you are doing. With no further ado, let's dive in. Jen Mann is the hilarious New York Times bestselling author of People I Want to Punch in the Throat, Competitive Crafters, Drop-Off Despots, and Other Suburban Scourges, as well as several anthologies and short collections, which if you're watching our YouTube, you can actually see behind me. And the most recent book in the series is Traveling with People I Want to Punch in the Throat. So I can't wait to hear more about that. And it's already a top seller on Amazon. Got that yellow flag. Good job, Jen. She lives in Canvas with their husband and two children, Gomer and, is it Adolpha or Adolpha?
Adolpha.
And it's not a right,
I mean,
it's a fake name anyway, but I want to get it right.
For a made up name, you can say it any way you want.
Exactly. And as we just clarified, those are not their real names. She says their real names are actually worse. And she spends her free time crafting and volunteering with the PTO. Seriously, I love that because they probably all think that you're just in there for material, aren't you?
Oh, I mean, I think if you hang out with me, you just know, like, so many of my friends are like, okay, this is off the record, before we ever start talking. So I think they just know that, like, everything is fodder. What was it that Nora Ephron said? Everything is copy. I mean, that's pretty much me.
Exactly. So, our podcast is all about encouraging moms to explore and pursue activities outside of this role of just a mom. And so as our logo says, we're mom and ... So we encourage women to go out in the dots, kind of like if it was a Venn diagram, like what are all those circles that can overlap with your life as a mom? And you got a lot of circles.
I have a few dots.
Because you do real estate, right?
Sort of. This is the first year I actually let my license expire, but my husband does it. And so I still do it like by proxy because I'm with him all the time. So I'm always like, there was a big joke a few months ago. We had a big fight about the contract that he was interpreting the contract one way and I was interpreting it another way. And I'm like, I've been selling real estate longer than you. And he was like, but I'm the one who's actually licensed right now. And I was like, well, good. Then you're the one who's going to be sued because you're wrong. And spoiler alert, I was right. But yeah. So I don't really do real estate anymore, but I did for many, many years, yes. Okay. While I was writing simultaneously, yes.
So was that something that you were doing a lot of before you started writing, or was it how did that time fill up?
Yeah, I mean, I started real estate back in 2002 when we got married, when my husband and I got married, and we didn't have kids yet. But we had moved from New York City back to Kansas City, where I'm from originally, and I have a lot of family here. And so real estate was sort of a good balance. We thought that it would be a good job for like a mom to have because you can set your own schedule and, it's commission based. So you work when you want to work. And it was a good job for me for many, many years. And so I did real estate full time for the next, 9 years. And then in 2011, I started writing, but I would still sell real estate full time. I would say probably around 2016 was when I started doing more like 50-50. Like I started spending, because I used to stay up late at night and write. I would sell real estate all day, hang out with my kids, hang out with my husband, put everybody to bed, and then write tomorrow's blog post, into the night. And after a while, I was getting too old for that. So I was like, okay, I got to sleep at some point. So I started letting real estate go a little bit more. And then it was like 50-50. And then I think a couple of years ago, it was, 80-20. I was doing very little, I'd maybe sell one or two houses every year. And my husband was doing the bulk of it. And then this year it was time for my license to be renewed. And you have to take a continuing ed every year.
Oh yeah.
And I was in the midst of writing a book and I really did not want to spend 15 hours trying to hold on to this damn license.
Right.
And so I was like, that's it, I'm done. so I left real estate at that point. Yeah.
Well, and you are a prolific writer too. So, I mean, it makes sense that that time got filled up. So, I
You know,
mean,
you kind of touched on a question I had for you, is that not only are you prolific and you cover a lot of genres and you are a mom and you do other things, you volunteer, do you intentionally structure your time to make that all happen? Or is it just however it gets done? Like, what does your day look like?
Yeah, so I do. Actually, I don't know if you have this book on your shelf back there, but I have a book called How I Frickin' Did It.
Yeah.
And I kind of break that down. Real estate actually taught me this. Before real estate, I'd had kind of like a normal office job where I was given duties and, I worked 9 to 5, 5 o'clock came, I clocked out, I went home, whatever wasn't done got done tomorrow. But with real estate, you're very much an independent contractor. And if you're not working, you're not getting paid. So they really taught me a lot about time blocking and how to say like, okay, so for this hour, you're going to just answer emails. And then for this hour, you're just going to prospect. And I have carried that over into my day-to-day writing world too, because I blog, I have social media, I publish books, I write books, I'm traditionally published, I'm self-published. And so it's like, I live and die by calendars, spreadsheets, and I'm usually working backwards. I usually have like a deadline that I want to make. And then I work backwards and figure out, okay, so what do I need to accomplish every day to get to that deadline? And then I time block my day. And and it's weird, like when my kids were little, I started this when my kids were like 4 and 6, 3 and 5, something like that. And like I said before, I would work into the night. I would put everybody to bed and I'd stay up at night and I would work. And then as I had more things to do and I needed more time, I would work all the time. I'd work like 7 days a week. But now that my kids are teenagers, are 14 and 16, like now I really try not to work on the weekends. I really try to take those weekends out because I think teenagers, I'm learning, they actually need a lot more parenting than the little kids did. And they need a lot more time. And whether they realize it or not, they need time with me and I need to be with them. And so that's the new equation, is figuring out how I can get everything. I used to have 7 days a week and now I have 5 days a week, and trying to figure out how to work that in. So I time block them too.
That's smart.
Yeah.
yeah. So was there any point there when you were just 100% just not just stay-at-home mom, but what inspired a lot of the group and now the podcast was this point that I hit and that I know Missy hit when we were 100% stay-at-home mom, just the kids. And it was this identity crisis that came with that. Did you ever experience any of that? Or
no, I think I had a different, though, kind of identity crisis because I actually didn't fit into either group, because I'd been selling real estate for 2 years before my son was born. And then when he was born prematurely. Mm-hmm. And so, and we had not really, I don't know, my husband and I, we really did not think about what we would do with him, I think. Like, we didn't realize, like, oh, we should probably think about daycare or something, And I don't know what, we were not very bright. And he had a full-time job outside the house at that point. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep. So he was out in the field all day. And then I'm home with this kid and I'm like, what are we supposed to do with this baby? And he's kind of fragile and, he's underweight and he needs special care. And so my husband, he's also like this like tech guru. So he was like, I tell you what, he's like, we're going to get you, like, that was the first time I ever knew you could have like Wi-Fi in your house. And, and so he hooked me up with all this stuff. Like, we joked that like my laptop weighed as much as my baby and I would carry both around the house. And so I learned how to work from home. And so then I would never go into my real estate office. So then I totally felt left out of that world. I'd go wheeling in with my baby in a stroller and, and I remember I wheeled in one day and my boss, he was a new boss and I hadn't even met him yet. And I'm still in like maternity pants and stuff. And I'm wheeling this baby in and he was like, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm one of your top producers. I'm here to drop off some contracts, like, I'm like, it's nap time, but I got to get things done. But then I try to go, I tried to schedule him. I still remember every Thursday we went to Kinder Music. And so, it's sort of like those weird memes where like, hello, fellow teenage kids. Like, that's how I felt like walking to those groups. I'm like, hello, fellow stay-at-home moms. And they're like, no,
you're not one of us.
You're not one of us. So I never really felt like I fit into either group. So that's kind of where I had my identity crisis, I think. And that's a lot of what drove me to start blogging, was because I was so lonely and kind of didn't feel like I fit in anywhere.
That is really, that's a different kind of isolation.
Yeah.
Even though I talk about stay-at-home moms a lot, my brother is a stay-at-home dad.
Whoa.
I think that that is also a unique situation.
Yes.
We'll probably end up covering eventually because I can't speak to that. That's such a unique little sliver of the stay-at-home population or even the parenting population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, but thank goodness for those weekly meetings. That was literally my only connection with like Gymboree.
Yes.
At
Jamboree.
1 hour a week. I mean, if it ever got canceled or if I couldn't do it or if the baby tried to nap through it, I mean, I had times when I would just be in the parking lot crying, like, because the baby had a blowout and we had to leave early. I'm like, but that's my one day of this week that I got to do something.
Your
And
1 hour.
yeah,
1 hour.
It's your
Exactly.
1 hour of the week. Yeah.
and it's precious. It's just precious.
Well, and for me, what like to me it was like my quality time with my baby, where I was like, oh, look at me, I'm giving him 100%, because there was like a meme I saw the other day that I actually shared because I was going to send it to my son, because it talked about how this woman said something that her son didn't have an imaginary friend, he had imaginary coworkers, and and I was like, that was my kid. Like, we'd give him like old cell phones to play with, and he'd be like, is it closed? Is it closed? And I'm like, oh man. I was like, we got to get him out of here. Like we need some friends.
Oh my God. We should do a coffee table book of the things that our kids used to say when they had play telephones, because it just says so much about their parents.
Yes.
Like if my
They can
daughter was ever
repeat
given a play
verbatim.
telephone, she would always say, we're almost there. We're running late. Because I never used my phone back when she was that age. I mean, we
Yeah.
barely had phones back when she was that age. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
always, we're on our way.
We're running late. Yeah, we are. We're running late.
I still have books in boxes from when we moved a couple months ago. So this is the I still just want to pee alone. But the original was I just want to pee alone. So how old were your kids when this was happening?
So I just want to pee alone. They would have been, that would have been 2012. They would have been 6 and 4 and 6. Yeah.
So in the thick of it.
Yeah. And then now, that one just came out in 2020. And that one's I Just Want to Hang Out With You. And that one was actually, it's funny because with those anthologies, I always think, like, you've been part of my anthology, Susanne, so it's like herding cats, it's like, you have like 35 writers, and writers are very sensitive people. And so they're always like, the night before the book is supposed to come out, they're like, I hate my essay and I want to redo it. And you're like, you're beautiful. It's fine. And so it's like giving birth, like every time. So every time when I'm done, I'm like, oh, never again. Like I'm beat. And then I'll come up with another idea and I'm like, oh, we can do that though. And so I really thought I was done. I was like, oh, this time I'm really done. And then like a few months ago, my daughter was like, you always just want to hang out with me. And I was like, oh, I do. And I was like, I used to want to pee alone. And now I'm like, I'm going to the bathroom. Anyone want to come? Like, and so she came up with that title and I thought, yeah, we could do that. So we quickly put that one out in 2020, I think spring of 2020.
Yeah, that was a fun one. And it really is, because I think our kids are very similar age. Mm-hmm. And so, I've kind of followed your path just because when I started blogging and started writing, I literally went and got the I Just Want to Pee Alone book. And I was like, okay, those 35 people on the back, I need to go and get to know them, follow their stuff, and the Kim Bongiornos of the world. And so I've literally been following you, but also following the kind of this same path with our kids, and this change in parenting that happens between, when they totally need you to when they don't totally need you, but kind of like what you were saying, they almost need you more in different ways when they're teenagers.
In different ways.
At the same age.
Definitely, and I think that's the thing too, is that my audience has aged with me too. So,
yeah,
they all found me with the Elf on the Shelf, most of them, and when we all had little kids, and now we're all like, none of us are through that, and now we're all just sort of like, what is TikTok? Like I remember a couple of years ago, people were like, what the hell is TikTok? Like, what am I doing? Like, what is happening? And now my son told me the other day, he's like, hey, I told him, I was like, hey, I got on TikTok. He's like, oh, great. And he's like, it's all just Karens now, just dancing. I'm like, yeah, I know, all my friends are on there.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I love it. Like, do you watch the bread making TikTok? I love it. So now he's leaving. I don't know where he's going, but I'll find him.
Is he leaving? Like, are the kids leaving TikTok? Have we chased them off?
I guess there's like alternate TikToks, like, and so they're all in the alt TikToks now, where, you know, they see what they want to see. But I think that's just an algorithm. Like, I think they're just too stupid to understand that that's what's really happening. You know, they're like, no,
yeah, my feed is very different than my son's feed for
100%.
sure. You don't see the same things.
And he thinks he's in some sort of alternate TikTok, and I'm like, no, they just know you. Like, they figured out who you are.
16-year-old TikTok.
Yeah.
You've been profiled.
Oh, totally, on TikTok. Yeah,
they know your data. So now, seeing all the successes and all the amazing things that you're doing, especially like when I originally started following you, I could not imagine that you had a doubt in yourself and the world. But I've got to imagine that there's some times that you encounter that Missy and I talked about on the last episode, this imposter syndrome, this fear of like, should I even bother? Is anybody going to want to read this? Is anybody, or whatever the thing is that you're trying to accomplish in your life, you feel like 10 other people have already done it better, so why even try, kind of thing. Does that ever happen to the great Jen Mann?
Great Jen, stop. Yeah, you know, I think at the beginning I was too stupid to feel inferior. Like, my whole story is I started blogging just like as an escape from my life, because like I said before, I didn't fit in. I didn't really know what was going on. I was overwhelmed with everything, and I started blogging. And within a few months of starting my blog, I wrote a viral post about the elf on the shelf. And I was suddenly like catapulted into this, you know, newfound career that I could go after. And so I was definitely scared that night that I went viral, that 1 million people read my one post. But I was more upset because I was like, it's not even my best. You know, like, I'm like, I'm so much funnier. So I was having like reverse, like, I guess, like, you know. And then I started writing, and I was so oblivious because I really never followed other blogs, and I didn't know other bloggers. And so I didn't even know that other people were writing about the same things I was writing about, you know. And I think that's what's so interesting about the internet, is that we're all just talking about the same things. It's just our own different experiences of it, or our own outlook on it, or whatever. You know, I just want to pee alone is not an original thought. It's just how we thought about it, you know, and what we had to say about it. And so I didn't really feel it until much later on, like when I started becoming like more aware of the rest of the world around me, that I was, oh God, what does make me so special? What does make me think that anybody wants to hear about this shit? And I would say though, this year, 2020 was the hardest. I've written a new book that's coming out from Random House. It'll be out in 2022. And it's a different path from people I want to punch in the throat. I'm very confident with people I want to punch in the throat. I'm very confident with that. I'm very confident that, you know, I can tell you a funny story. If you don't like it, we just have different senses of humor and you should move on, you know, kind of thing. But with this, I wrote a book called Midlife Bites, and it's all about my midlife crisis, which is sort of the next step in our great aging world here as we go along, you know. Like, you know, we started out wanting to pee alone, and now we're like hot flashes. And, you know, and this is more of a self-help book, and I felt very much like a fraud all the time. I was like, what the do I know? Like, I'm not anybody. And my editor had to keep coming back and saying, everyone's going through this. We just want to know what you're going through, how Jen is dealing with it. What does Jen think of all this? And I'm like, who cares what Jen thinks of it? And she was like, people care. And I'm like, I hope so. So it took me a year to write. I've never taken so long to write a book in my life. And it took me a year to write. I lost sleep over it. Like, I'm very, like, I'm happy with it now, but it has gone through probably 6 rewrites at this point, because it would almost be due. And then I'd have this idea of a different way I wanted to go with it. And I'm like, and I'd email my editor, I'm like, hang on a second, but it's going to be better. I promise. You know? She was like, go for it. So
now we don't want any spoiler alerts, but did you come to any grand answers? I mean, because I think that's a lot what our listeners, whether it's this crisis of, you know, starting to stay at home, or a midlife crisis, I think the emotions that you go through and just this process of sorting it all out are kind of similar.
Well, and I think for me, what it came down to was I realized that I saw patterns in my life, that this has kind of happened to me before. And it's interesting you ask about the imposter syndrome, because a lot of what it boils down to for me personally is I forget who I am. And I forget, like, I'll forget who I am and what I'm good at and what I want to accomplish and what I want to do. And I'll start worrying about what everybody else is doing, you know, and I'm usually pretty good to just put on blinders and do what I do best and stay in my lane and do my thing. Right. But when I start to kind of worry about what everybody else is doing and I start to compare myself to everybody else, that's when goes sideways. And so the great epiphany was kind of get back in your damn lane, you know, like, and I think the thing too, embrace the good part of aging, you know, I have always been a person that doesn't really give a freak. I'm trying to make it sound to bleep
You
me.
can cuss. It's okay.
Okay. I'm a person who doesn't give a but as I get older, we all kind of reach that point, and I'm reaching it even like more so than usual. And so I think that's the other thing is that, you know, I have a chapter in there about, you know, nobody cares what you do, because they really don't. They're so focused on themselves, and everyone's so worried what everybody else thinks. And it's like, nobody cares. They all just focus on you and what you do best and what makes you happy. Yeah. And, yeah, so that was kind of what I learned, was that I just had to remind myself and get back to who I am. And we all have our strengths. Figure out what your strength is and go to that.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge that so many of us face, is that we've forgotten who we are. We don't know how to figure out who we are. And you're lost in this just muddled place. And that if you can just laser focus, like I wrote down when you said, I forget who I am.
Yeah.
I think that soundbite is the soundbite of this episode so far, because you're right. If you know who you are, you just go out and do your thing. There's no new story in the world. They've all been told. Everything has happened before to somebody, but it's your take on it, and that's why it matters.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, because I said something about this the other day to a friend, and she said, well, how do I know who I am? And I was like, and, you know, and I've known her for a long time, so it was easy for me to point out to her. I was like, you know, you're a badass business owner. You are, you know, you volunteer with kids who need help. Like, you know, all these things, you know, you're a great mom. You do these. And she was like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, and so focus on those things. And when you focus on those things, everything else will work out for you, because you're doing what you do best. So I think that's the main takeaway for me, was just to kind of get back into what I do and not worry about what everybody expects from me or what I'm worried about. You know, that was the other thing, is we all worry about the future. You know, this is something I was telling my daughter the other day. You know, I'm one who, like, I don't live too much in the past, but, you know, we all have those cringy moments where we wake up in the middle of the night and we're like, God, I can't believe I did that. Or, you know, and like, nobody remembers that except for you.
Like, and 1987.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you want to, like, call someone out and be like, hey, so, you know, remember in 1982, like, you went in for a handshake and I hugged, like, I'm so sorry. You know, like, super awkward of me to do that. And they'll be like, okay, because this isn't awkward that you're calling me about this. And then I still think
about the time 20 years ago that I introduced myself as my husband. Like, I said his name, not mine.
There you go.
And probably nobody remembers that, but it wakes me up on occasion.
Yes.
Still.
Yes.
I'm going to start addressing my emails to your husband's name.
Well, and then I told her, and then we all worry about the future. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know. We have especially right now, we have no clue what's going to happen in the future. And so I'm like, all you can control is what's happening right this moment and what you are doing in this moment. And if you do that, you'll be a much happier person.
That's some good advice.
That's very good advice. One of the things we were talking about on our last episode too is this idea of this confetti time that moms get stuck with. So basically, you know, you have 5 minutes in between naps, or you've got like 10 minutes here. So it's never enough time to like do anything that feels like truly valuable. And so you get in this bad habit of just filling that with nothing. Do you have any good habits as far, it sounds like you're someone who uses every minute or doesn't waste a lot of time. So how did you never get in that habit where you're just always too busy to have that confetti time to waste?
Well, I think that was the other thing I kind of learned writing this midlife book, was that I had gotten away from having fun. Like, I'd gotten so wrapped up in my work and deadlines and, you know, putting out content so that while my iron is hot and I don't want to lose my audience and, you know, all this nonsense. And so now I do to, you know, my husband's not very thrilled with it, but I'm like, I found a group that I go to happy hour with, you know, and before the pandemic, we were going to happy hour once a week. And I was like, oh, it's happy hour time. I got to go. Bye-bye, you know, enjoy. And he was like, but is it, and he's very good for like, is it for work like, are you getting us clients? Are you selling books? I'm like, nope, I'm just going to have some fun. I'm going to have a drink and I'm going to tell some stories and laugh and we're going to have a great time. And he was like, I don't get it. You know? So I think that's the other thing is like figuring out, you know, we all have 1 hour and, you know, because I can't tell you how many times I see it more from writers that will write to me and they'll be like, how do you find the time to do this? I'm like, keep track of how much Netflix and TikTok you watch, because I guarantee you there's an hour in there somewhere that you can find and, you know, and then make that your priority. Because my whole thing is I had to explain to my family, I'm like, if I'm happy, then you're happy. It's, you know, it's trickle down economics. Like if I, you know, like if I'm doing well, then we're all doing well, because you don't want mom to be crazy, do you? And so whether it's like, I have a group called Midlife Bites and I use them a lot for content when I was writing the book. And I had asked them like, what is something that is like a no, like it's a no-go, like I have to do it. And, you know, and there were tons of women that were just like, I run every morning, or I, you know, I do yoga every day, like whatever it is. And they're like, and my family knows it's 1 hour and don't mess with me for that hour. And I think boundaries are important, because how many husbands ask us if they can have an hour to go do something? We're the only ones that feel guilty.
Oh yeah.
You know, we're the only ones that are like, hey, I was just like, when we were really locked down tight and we couldn't go anywhere, I would text my husband and I'd be like, I'm going for a drive for an hour. I need to scream and cry. I'll be back. And he was just like, cool, have a good time. And I was like, yeah, you don't want me here to do that. And I think that's the thing is like, if we tell our partners sort of what we need, you know, they want to help us, but we just have to be more clear about what we need and what our boundaries are.
Yeah.
And not apologize for having those needs and boundaries.
Yeah.
It took me, my kids are 14 and 11. And so they've been able to read for a really long time, but it was only this year that I've created a sign to put on my door that says, I'm working. Do not come in here. Because a simple closed door without a sign is not enough.
Not enough.
There's no such thing as a boundary that like that. But once I put the sign up, everybody does respect that boundary and nobody thinks it's weird. I apologized for it at first. And my whole family said, why? That's your time. We didn't know you needed it. Yeah. Well, because they're not going to think of that on their own.
Well, that's it. You know, again, I mean, I keep referring to memes because that's how I communicate. It's a love language that I have. But, you know, yeah, it is. But I saw one the other day where it was something about, and I wish I could give credit because I don't know who these people are, but they're great. I'm just jealous because I can't write a meme. But it was something about, you know, you moms are so great, you do it everything. And I'm like, well, actually, I could use some help. No, you're so strong, you're so tough, you know, but really, I could use some help. And I was like, I identify with that. Yes. And I think especially now with the pandemic going on, so much has fallen to us. I don't know, you know, I haven't had one male reader complain to me yet that he's overwhelmed doing virtual ed with his kids, whereas I have dozens of emails from women complaining about that. So I think, and I finally had to tell my husband, I was like, hey, I'm going to need you to pitch in with this stuff. And then we got a puppy too, which he really was excited about. So,
oh my gosh.
I need you to walk the dog too.
Oh, I feel like I talked to you forever about this. We're getting to the real heart and the meat. And you know what? We'll have to bring you back when Midlife Bites comes out.
Please do.
Because I think that is going to be really the heart of a lot of the discussions that we have. And not only putting that sign up on the door for your spouse or your kids to read, but I'm the one who needs to make the sign for myself. My husband used to, before, when we could leave the house, he would physically put me in the car, be like, go take your laptop, go to Starbucks, go. And I almost need that someone, an outside force, to forcibly tell me to go do your thing.
Yeah.
But I do want to hear more about, because you just had a book come out last week. Like I said, you're prolific. You got them coming. So it's traveling with people I want to punch in the throat. So what are the highlights people can look forward to?
I don't have a copy to hold up. I was ever to send to you guys right yet. I'll send it to you. My shipment has been delayed with everything going on with the burning of the world. And so they're still not here yet.
I understand.
So I still haven't even smelled it yet, but I heard it smells good, but I haven't seen it yet in my hot little hand. But yes, I've put out Traveling with People with a Punch in the Throat on January 5th, the day before the coup, which was probably not the best day to launch a book. I didn't really if I know, I mean, I guess I did know the coup was coming, but I didn't think it was really coming. So I didn't think about it when I launched the book. So it's been a little interesting to try to, hey, everybody, I know the world is burning, but if you'd like to buy a book, I'm available to sign it for you.
Well, it is a good time for a distraction. I would encourage people who just need a break from watching CNN and such that it is nice to balance it out with.
There
It
you
is.
go.
Yeah, we did the same thing with the podcast. We sort of soft launched the morning of the coup. That was timing. Perfect timing.
We're
real super soft launch. But so who are the people you're traveling with?
It's a lot of stories from, just my whole thing is just stories about myself and my family and my experiences. So it's from childhood on up. I'm a big traveler. Well, I used to be before I had kids, but I was a pretty big traveler, and I went abroad for school programs and things like that. And so I had some crazy, wild experiences with that. And then I have a couple years ago, I released a book called Working with People I Want to Punch in the Throat, this one. And I went on like a weird book tour for that book. I came to Austin. We did it. Yes.
I remember.
And so I did this whole thing where my readers could my readers would host me someplace, and then I would come there. And I think we did a pizzeria, right?
Yep, we went to Christian Shaw's Pizzeria.
There was. See, I was just having, I've been in pizzerias, I've been in bars, libraries, people's front yard. I mean, it was a very crazy tour, and I was out there for 2 years. COVID stopped it. I would have still been, 2020 was all booked and ready to go, but then COVID kind of put the halt on that. I went out in March, was the last time I went out, was March, right before that. But so I do have a couple of stories from that, because I was heckled at one event, and
what?
Yeah.
You were heckled at your own event?
Yeah. It was wild. But when I called home that night, because I was kind of upset about it, when I called home, my husband's like, well, now you've arrived. You have your first heckler. So it's always good to flip the switch and, look at the perspective from a different side. But
okay. And is that story in the book?
It is in the book.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to just tease that one, because that's something I'm sure people would want to hear more about.
Yeah. And so, so it's just been kind of just a bunch of stories about all of our travels. There's my honeymoon was kind of a disaster. I realized that, we've had we went to Hawaii, and there was a shark attack at a beach when we were there. So we've just had some crazy stuff happen to us.
Okay. Now, Jen, we can cut this out if it's going to get you in trouble with your husband, but I still remember from that time that we were drinking at the Blog you were talking about the rental cars that your husband gets you. And it had practically manual roll down windows.
That was Baltimore. Oh, I should have written about that. Yes. So when I travel, he always he books my hotel and my rental car, because God forbid I stayed anything more than a 2-star. And he'll rent these cars for me, and he'll be like, well, you're by yourself, so you just have your books or whatever. So he'll rent me these little tiny I think I was in a Yaris or something for that conference, and I was in the parking garage, and he'll rent me these little tiny cars that I swear are motored, they're powered by a gerbil or something. And it's dark, because you're in the garage, and so it's dark inside, and I pull up, and you have to show your license and everything to get out of the garage, and the woman's kind of standing there, and she's real irritated with me. There's a line behind me, and I'm sort of and I can't figure out how to put the window down, and I'm and I keep hitting the only button I can see, which is locking and unlocking the doors. So I'm no. And I was and then I'm banging on the window, and I'm help, and so finally I look down, and I see a crank. Who makes cars like this anymore? There was a crank. There was a little crank window, and I was oh my God. So I cranked it down.
And my arm doesn't do this anymore.
She was not impressed with me, because I was it cranked, the window cranked. And she was uh-huh. I was okay.
I didn't even think, first of all, that they even made cars that you could manually roll down anymore. And I'm just wondering, if I left my kids in my 1972 Chevy Nova that I used to drive, which you had to lock and unlock by, pressing something down.
Yeah.
And you had to roll down the windows. I think they might get trapped in there. I think they might starve.
Well, and this was not because I looked it up, because I had to know. I was I pulled the manual out. I mean, that car was only a year old at that point, and that was maybe 5 years ago. So it wasn't, we're not talking 1990, or something.
I know somebody that as little as probably 5 to 10 years ago, somewhere in there, special ordered a car, with the crank. Like they special ordered it with as few technological advances as possible. So I know somewhere on an assembly line, they do still do that.
Well, I shared the picture because I couldn't believe it. And when I put the picture up on social media, I couldn't believe how many people chimed in with a lot of American made cars that were brand new, that they're like, it was part of the higher level package. And they're like, I didn't want to spend the higher level package. So I had the crank. And these are like $40,000 cars though. I mean, we're not talking like, you know, a Yaris. And so I was like, what? So I guess they are still out there. I'm just spoiled with my, you know, swagger wagon. The minivan, you know, wouldn't know what to do with the crank window. So,
well, the first car I bought, which was a brand new Honda Civic, what year was that? Like 92. And it didn't have a passenger side rear view mirror.
Oh,
like how is that an option? That. First of all, shame on me for being too cheap to pay the extra $150 for a rear view mirror. But shame on Honda for making that an option. That should just price it higher and don't let us choose. So hey, do you want to do part of our closing segment with us? Do you have time for that?
Sure. What do we do?
It's really super formalized.
Yeah.
we don't know if this is going to be the name that sticks with it.
I think I decided this past week that I don't like the name.
You don't like the name?
Yeah, but I haven't come up with anything better. So I mean, we're rolling with it.
Okay. Well, it had some nice alliteration too.
It does.
Look, listen, learn.
What's it called?
Look, the look on your face.
Look loose. What? What?
Look, listen, learn.
Look, listen, learn. Okay.
Learn. So it's stuff that you're either reading or watching or listening to podcasts or music you like, or something that you've learned the week. And you don't have to do one of each of these. It's just basically what have you been up to this week?
Yeah.
So basically, what's your favorite thing that you're looking at, listening to, or learning this week?
Or learning about this week. I think my favorite thing, the favorite thing I've been looking at this week, I've had a hard time sort of reading lately. I can't read. I can't concentrate on a book these days, and my brain is kind of fried. So I've been scrolling through Instagram mindlessly, but I stumbled onto the National Geographic website, or page, I should say, on Instagram. And I'm not a big animal person, but I do enjoy looking at the animals. It calms me. And so I just keep scrolling through and I'm like, whales, walruses. You know?
Oh, that sounds lovely.
Like, you know how some people like puppy, you know, they're always like drop a puppy picture because I'm, you know, well, I have a puppy and he stresses me out. So now I'm just like, whales seem nice. Like maybe we could get a whale.
Whales never caused me any trouble or peed on my sofa.
Right. Whales don't ask me for more food. What did I do? I got something else that wants to be fed. What the heck?
Okay. And so that was the National Geographic Instagram account. I like that. What have you been doing, Missy?
Well, I actually yesterday read Jen's middle grade fiction book. Ooh. And I love it. So I'm holding up a picture on my phone because I have it on my Kindle. I don't know if we can see that. That's terrible. Anyway, My Lame Life, Queen of the Misfits.
I'm glad you mentioned that. My daughter read that. And
I read it because I have a middle grade reader and know a lot of people with middle grade readers. And so I thought I should check it out and recommend it. It is so cute. I love Plum. I love her mother.
Thank you.
Yeah, her mom's great. So I've been reading that. And do you want me to do all mine or take turns? What are we doing?
What are we doing?
Do you want me to go through my whole look, listen, learn?
We can just choose one of the L's. You don't have to do all the L's.
Okay. All right. There you go.
I mean, what have I been listening to? You know what? It's kind of my equivalent of the National Geographic thing. Is the Smartless podcast.
Ooh.
Have you guys listened to this? It is Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett, and it's called Smartless. And they just bring in, one of them brings in a guest, and the other two don't know who it's going to be. And I mean, they're like serious guests. Like the one I was just listening to today was Bryan Cranston, who just seems like the most wonderful human. The guy from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
But and so even though it's this silly and they're usually just making fun of each other and calling each other bad names, but they get you right here in the heart sometimes too. So I highly recommend it.
Well, you had me with Jason Bateman, so you know. I'll do anything. I'll watch anything he does or listen to anything he does.
Exactly.
Yeah. How many people our age do you think at some point were imaginarily married to Jason Bateman? Like
you did?
Like he was an imaginary boyfriend for a long time.
Oh, mine when I was little was Ralph Macchio.
Oh, are you watching Cobra Kai?
No.
That's the other okay, here's my watch. This is my other look, okay? So going back to raising teenagers. So my daughter is pretty good to hang out with me, but my son really, he's 16. He thinks I'm weird, all these things. A couple months ago, he was like, hey mom, I have this show I've been watching and I think you should watch it with me. And I was like, what is it?
Ooh.
And he's like, Cobra Kai. And I was like, what? I don't understand. So it's a reboot of Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio as a 45-year-old dude. And then it's Billy, like the bad guy, the blonde,
Yes.
And he's in it. It is horrible. Okay. It's like, I'll just tell you right now, it is horrible. Like their karate moves are this slow. They're like, hi yeah, like when they're like 45-year-old dudes like fighting, they're like, come at me, bro. And it is terrible. But my son and I watch it together and we enjoy it. And then the other thing we watch together, which is completely inappropriate, and you have to be a really super cool mom like me if you're going to do it, is Big Mouth. Big Mouth is an animated. It's animated.
Yes.
Oh, you need a lot of you need to just fix your face before you start because it's so much sex talk and like gross sex talk, but yet real like sex talk.
Mm-hmm. And it's called Big Mouth?
Big Mouth, yes. And you just fix your face and you have some really good talks with them if you can get through it. I've had a few parents that are just like, I love it. It's awesome. I imagine watching it with my own mother and I want to die inside, but like I'm that cool mom. And so you watch it, but it's a good one, I think. And this whole season, the third season, was all about like mental health, which I thought was really good too, because they talked a lot about, what feels normal and what doesn't feel normal and what to do about it. And so, and because it's all animated, you don't mind when pubic hairs sing and things like that. You're just like, oh, that's normal. Of course they do. So those are my two weird things. If you want to connect to your teenage son, and if you love Ralph Macchio, then Cobra Kai and maybe a side of Big Mouth if you can handle it.
But Ralph, he's not a good actor.
Expecting those two to go together.
No, Missy, he's not.
Mark and I watched a good chunk of it and I had to quit at some point in the second season. I was like, I can't do it anymore. But I couldn't get over what a terrible actor Ralph is.
It's super painful. I mean, the whole plot where it's like, how many schools really have like karate gangs roving around fighting each other? They're like, oh, that's the cool dojo. You don't want to mess with those guys.
It's a reach. It's a bit of a reach.
Yeah. I don't know. Both my kids did karate for quite a while, but I don't think it ever made its way into their school day.
Oh, well, it's too bad because if you're from the right dojo, you could be prom king. So,
yeah.
Our dojo was just in the basketball court at our gym. Which actually, I say that, but the instructors, which are not called instructors, they are called
Sensei.
Sensei? Sensei?
Well, at least on Cobra Kai they are.
Yeah. Well, no, they were the coaches. If their particular style of karate would have been the one that got picked for the Olympics when they started doing Olympic karate stuff, they were going to be the coaches.
Oh, so you did have the cool dojo.
So it was, we could have, if we were going to have a karate gang, I would want them leading it. But just location wise, it was on a basketball court at the gym, which I got to say worked out pretty well for me in the sense that if I wanted to work out, which I never did, they were in karate for probably combined 6 years. And I think I worked out maybe 2 days of those 6 years worth of lessons because there's a cafe in the gym too. So you can just go sit at the cafe while the kids are in karate.
It's a good time to get writing done.
Yeah. You would think, but no, I just scroll social media. This is why you have 20 books on my bookshelf and I have 0.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting to the bottom of why I'm not publishing a book.
This is why my husband has written 6 books and has a 70-hour-a-week job.
That is super crazy. Every time I turn around, he's putting out another one, and he hasn't quit his full-time job, has he?
No. He's like a VP of a huge ad agency and he's just whipping out, but I think he just wrote another one and I don't ever hear about it because he just kind of does it. He goes, he's disciplined. And it's not like he's an absent husband or father. I mean, he goes into work a half hour early and he does it.
Amazing.
Chips
No, my
away.
family knows. They hear all about it. I'm like, Mom's on a deadline. Don't come near me. You know, like, you're on your own. Chicken nuggets and fish sticks. You can make them yourself. You know.
Yeah, we got to teach my son how to turn on he can microwave. I'm not sure how I feel about him with the gas stove. So.
No, you get them the air fryer. Get them the air fryer and they can cook everything they need in there.
I thought air fryer was like a crock pot. Like you could only do something if you're cooking it for 3 hours.
Oh no, it's like 15
It's fast.
minutes. Like, and you buy all that frozen stuff and they just throw it all in there and they can heat up everything in the air fryer.
Okay, well now it's something else to research.
I just learned you something, Suzanne, in your LLL series here. Just learned you.
I feel like we have looked and listened and now we've all learned a little something too.
There we go.
See?
You can't drop the name now. You're gonna just
now we're stuck with it.
Lean into it.
Well, it's called the la la la.
La 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 la.
See, it's growing on me. Okay, is there anything we did not cover? I'm so glad you brought up that book for the middle grade mamas because I almost forgot it.
Yeah, it's
Well,
great.
and the second book in my lane life, that's what I'm working on in 2021.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be writing. I'm working on that. It needs some work, but it's being written right now. It's written is a strong word. It's being contemplated heavily.
Right.
But it's finally time. I finally got everything else off the to-do list because that poor book just kept getting pushed lower and lower on the list.
Now, why do you think that is though?
It's economics. That book does not sell.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah. I mean, that one was a labor of love. That one was written for my daughter and her friends, and they really like it. And honestly, I get the most probably positive mail about that book. I get a lot of hate mail about my other books, but I get the most positive mail about that one. But it just didn't sell. My audience is not middle grade kids, and their moms did a pretty decent job buying it for them, but I only can reach so many of them. And so it just didn't make sense financially to work on it yet while I had other books that could be sold. So, but now I have this lull and I want to get it done and then hopefully take it to a traditional publisher and get it out there so it'll be in bookstores where kids can find it. Because a lot of kids are not on Amazon or iBooks looking for books. So
what you do is you get on the TikTok.
Hey kids.
If you got to get on the alternate TikTok though.
That's right. I got to get on a book talk.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I feel like we could do a whole separate episode. I want to hear more about the hate letters too. Who takes the time?
I should do a whole book of just like horrible letters I've received. Like that would be kind of funny actually.
Or like those comedians that read their like the bad tweets. Like just do a YouTube channel where you just read your hate mail.
I know. I should do that. I used to say I was going to read like my 1-stars. My 1-star reviews, I do actually use them as marketing tools because I write humor. Like the 1-stars are funny. And so like if I want to sell some books, I do put up like I'll copy and paste like a 1-star review and I'm like, hey, you guys, Bill thinks I suck. So because they're usually pretty funny. Like didn't read it, hated it, 1 star. I'm like, you didn't even read it.
You didn't read it?
Those people are the worst.
Or barely laughed.
Like what's inside of you that says I need to go send hateful information to someone? Like I get leaving a glowing review or telling someone that the service was good or whatever it is, but what is inside of you that you're going to sit down and write hate mail to someone?
Just move on, people. I almost take them over the people who just leave things that don't make any sense, though. Like people who will give a 5-star review on a bike because they were pleasantly surprised that the tires were inflated when it arrived. I'm like, no, I want to know how the bike works, not the, or, they give it a 0-star because, the shipping was delayed. I'm like, no, that is not a review of the bike.
That's what I do too. I share this too because I have several 5-star reviews where it's always like 5 stars, arrived on time, in good shape. I'm like, well, thank God for that because that could have been close. It could have upset my whole review, my whole stars if you hadn't got it on time.
That would never be a review of me because I don't arrive on time and I'm not in good shape right now. So 0-star.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way. Okay, so we covered all that. Yeah. Anything else
Thank
we can
you.
pimp out for you, Jen?
No, I think we're good. I think we pimped pretty hard. I think we're good. I think we're in
We'll
good
pimp
shape.
some more on social media.
You know me, I enjoy a good pimp. So
Yes. Be ready for a big bump in your sales in about 4 months when people start actually listening to our podcast.
I will. I'll look forward to it. I'll be like, this is it. This is it.
We're just waiting for it. Well, we have kept you for your promised allotted time. I appreciate you giving us all this time out of your day.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was always fun to hang out.
We're doing the wave.
Yeah, we wave.
Thanks for joining us and our guest, Jen Mann, today on Mom and ... We're going to have links to Jen's website and socials in our show notes, so you can go follow her everywhere and buy all of her books. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us as well, wherever it is you listen to your podcasts. You can also join us over on Facebook and Instagram. If you're looking for links of all the places you can follow us, those are all on our website, momandpodcast.com, with the and spelled out. We look forward to seeing you here next week. Until then, go on out there and make those ellipses count.